Today we return to the same boundless ocean of wisdom that gave us the tale of the sea morgue, Farid ud-Din Attar's The Conference of the Birds. The story of the 30 birds in the sea morgue is a call to self-recognition, an unveiling of unity disguised as a journey. But hidden within this masterpiece is another story, one that burns with an even greater intensity. It is the tale of the moth and the flame, a story so fierce and uncompromising that it doesn't just speak of surrender, it embodies it. This is not a lesson for the cautious or the hesitant. It is for those who feel a nameless longing within, an ache that no worldly comfort can satisfy. It is for those who sense that the ultimate truth is not something to be grasped, but something to be consumed by. What does it mean to love so completely that nothing remains of you? What does it mean to long for truth, not as a seeker, but as a moth drawn irresistibly to the fire? Today, we step into the heart of this mystery. The story begins one night when a group of moths gathers to discuss the mystery of the flame. They've heard of it, they're drawn to it, but they don't truly know what it is. Together, they decide that one of them should venture out and bring back news of this elusive glow. The first moth, cautious but curious, flies off and soon spots the warm light of a candle burning in a distant window. He comes no closer and quickly returns to tell the others what he's seen. But the mentor of the moths, wise and uncompromising, dismisses his claim. He knows nothing of the flame, the master said. Undeterred, a second moth takes flight. This one is braver, venturing beyond the palace door to hover near the candle's glow. The heat, the brightness, it shakes him, and he trembles with a mix of fear and yearning. But he too stops short and returns to share his experience. The mentor looks at him and says, "You do not bear the signs of one who's fathomed how the candle shines." And then, finally, a third moth rises. This one doesn't hesitate. He flies with a dizzy, frantic energy, drawn straight into the heart of the flame. He doesn't stop to analyze or report back. In his passionate dance, his very being merges with the fire. His wings, his body, his self, they're consumed, glowing red in the intensity of the light. The mentor watches this sudden blaze, the moth's form dissolving in the flame, and softly says, He knows the truth we seek, that hidden truth of which we cannot speak." This story, though simple, is one of the most powerful metaphors for the spiritual path. The flame, of course, represents the ultimate truth, the divine, the infinite. The moths are seekers, each longing to understand the light. But what sets the third moth apart? It's not his courage alone, it's his surrender. He doesn't hold back, doesn't stop to protect himself, doesn't cling to the idea of his separate identity. He lets go completely. For many of us, this idea is terrifying. We associate surrender with weakness, with giving up. But the moth's sacrifice isn't destruction, it's union. In the moment he enters the flame, he doesn't die in the way we think of death. What burns away is the illusion of separation. The third moth doesn't lose himself. He becomes one with the light he longed for. This isn't annihilation, it's liberation. We often confuse this surrender with bodily death, but that's not what the story is about. The death of the moth is the death of the ego, the death of the false self that believes it is separate from the whole. And here's the paradox. Only when this false self dissolves can we see the truth of life. The flame has always been what the moth is. The separation was never real. This brings us to the moth's longing. In the story, the first two moths hesitate. They're drawn to the flame, but their fear holds them back. They want to understand without risking themselves, to know without letting go. This is the hesitation that so many of us feel in our own lives. We want the truth, but we don't want to lose the comfort of our familiar selves. The third moth, however, doesn't hesitate. His longing is so pure, so total, that it overrides all fear. He knows in the deepest part of himself that the only way to truly know the flame is to merge with it. This longing, the pull toward unity, even at the cost of our identity, is something we all feel, whether we recognize it or not. It's the heart's deepest devotion, the call to return to what we've always been. And while it might seem irrational, it's the most natural thing in the world. The third moth's leap into the flame isn't a reckless act. It's the fulfillment of a longing that couldn't be denied. When we compare this to the story of the birds in the Conference of the Birds, an interesting contrast emerges. The 30 birds who reach the sea morgue undertake a long and arduous journey. They face trials, cross valleys, and slowly strip away their illusions. It's a gradual unfolding. The moth, on the other hand, takes a direct plunge. He doesn't journey through valleys or wrestle with doubts. He lets go all at once. Both paths lead to the same truth, the realization that the self and the divine are not two, but one. Whether we take the slow, winding road or the sudden leap, the destination is the same. The separation dissolves. The seeker disappears. What remains is the light, the unity that was there all along. So what does this mean for us? It means that the spiritual journey isn't about adding something to ourselves or becoming someone new. It's about letting go of what isn't real. It's about surrendering the idea that we are separate, isolated beings. And while that surrender can feel like a kind of death, it's actually the gateway to life itself. Life in its fullness, its wholeness, its truth. In our modern lives, this story holds a mirror to the struggles we face every day. Think about how much energy we spend trying to protect our sense of self, our identity, our image, our plans for the future. We cling to ideas about who we are, what we need to achieve, and how the world should see us. But this clinging often leaves us feeling disconnected and burdened. The story of the moth shows us a different way. It reminds us that true freedom doesn't come from building a stronger identity or achieving more. It comes from letting go of the need to control, to define, to separate. This doesn't mean giving up on life. It means living with a sense of openness and trust, allowing life to flow through us without resistance. In a world that constantly tells us to hold on tighter, the moth's surrender teaches us the radical power of letting go. The story of the moth and the flame reminds us that surrender isn't something to fear. It's an act of profound trust. It's a recognition that what we long for, the light, the truth, the infinite, is already what we are. The only thing standing in the way is the illusion of me. And when that illusion burns away, what's left isn't nothing, it's everything.